This video will demonstrate the histology of the muscular system. Now recall that muscle tissue in general is specialized to contract and provide movement. And there are actually three different types of muscle tissue: skeletal, cardiac, and smooth, but all three contract and provide movement of something. Skeletal muscle is considered striated muscle, so it's going to look like it has stripes, light, dark, light, dark. It's also voluntary. Remember that means that you choose, you can decide whether you're going to contract that muscle or not. And it's called skeletal muscle because it is attached to the skeleton. Cardiac muscle is also striated, so it's going to have the light, dark, light, dark. However, it's involuntary. You can't choose to make cardiac muscle contract or relax. And cardiac muscle, based on that word cardio, means that it's going to be found in the heart only. Smooth muscle is not striated. Muscle is actually either striated or smooth, and so that's why it's actually called smooth muscle, because it doesn't have striations. It's also involuntary. You can't decide whether you're going to contract smooth muscle or not. And the most common place to find smooth muscle is found in the lining or outside the walls of hollow organs. And usually this muscle is going to be found in two layers, and they're going to be perpendicular to each other. For example, one straight up and down and one going across. So when we look at a slide, we'll see two different orientations of smooth muscle. Now we're also going to be taking a look at the neuromuscular junction, and this is the location where a nerve interacts with a muscle fiber. And there are two types of cells that make up this neuromuscular junction. We're going to have the neuro part, the motor neuron, and we're going to have an axon that's going to come from the cell body out to the muscle, and then at the very end you'll have an axon or synaptic terminal, so that's where it is going to interact with the muscle. And then on the skeletal muscle fibers, that's the other type of cell, and we're going to have something called a motor end plate, and that's just the area of the skeletal muscle fiber that will receive the axon terminal. Now a motor unit is defined as one motor neuron and all of the muscle fibers it innervates, and depending on where and how precise these muscles have to be, that the size of that motor unit will change. I'm going to be using slides from the Ohio State University Medical Center to demonstrate all of these types of tissue. Okay, so here I am at the Ohio State University Medical Center website, and so I'm going to pick skeletal muscle here. And so at this magnification we really can't see any of the features, so we're going to zoom in here. And if you recall that skeletal muscle is arranged into fascicles, and so you remember that you've got the muscle as a whole, and that would be surrounded by the epimysium, the connective tissue layer epimysium, and then you have a fascicle, which is just a bundle of muscle fibers, and so I would consider kind of from this place to this place would be one fascicle, and this is one fascicle, this is another one. And that would be surrounded by the perimysium. And then each individual muscle fiber is surrounded by an endomysium, another connective tissue layer. Now, some things that I'm looking for to be able to identify this as skeletal muscle. It's very, very easy to see the striations here. We can see that light, dark, light, dark, light, dark banding on each one of these muscle fibers. And the muscle fibers are very long. They are nearly as long, and if I zoom out again, this area, if I just look at the sign, the fiber starts here and it's going to keep going. So as long as the muscle is, that's how long the fiber is. So that's unique to skeletal muscle. It is striated. All of the nuclei, or most of the nuclei, you can kind of see are pushed out to the very edges of these muscle fibers. And then that endomysium is going to be what I would consider this kind of white area in between each muscle fiber, because that's going to be the wrapping or covering around each individual muscle fiber. And if you were in class and heard my crayon box analogy, remember that the the muscle fiber is like the actual crayon, and the endomysium is like the paper wrapping around it. So it's going to hug this, this muscle fiber very closely. So this is skeletal muscle. Okay. Now for cardiac muscle, remember it was also striated. I'm going to zoom in here pretty far. On this staining, on this slide, it's rather hard to see the striations, but I can kind of see that there's some light, dark, light, dark, light, dark areas here, kind of towards the edge of some of these cells. But the feature that I'm looking for, here we go, are the intercalated discs. So first of all, I see that the cells are not pushed out way to the side, and then I see these really dark lines going across the cells. Those are the intercalated discs, and you see those everywhere where one cell interacts with another cell. We have all of these intercalated discs. So if you see those, you automatically know that you are looking at cardiac muscle, because none of the other types of muscle tissue have intercalated discs. Now for smooth muscle, I'm going to jump over to the digestive system, because if you recall, we said that smooth muscle lines hollow organs. And so as you can see, it's hollow. This is the inside of the intestines. And so in this organ, we have several different types of muscle tissue. Here towards the lumen, towards the inside, I have an epithelial tissue. Then I'm going to have a connective tissue. And then here around the outside, this kind of ring around the outside is the smooth muscle. So let's focus on that. And as I zoom in here, remember how I said that they are at right angles? They're perpendicular to each other, usually 2 layers. So everywhere from this line, kind of pinkish line here, to this area is the smooth muscle layer. And I can see that there are a bunch of cells going in this direction. So this is a longitudinal section. And then this is also smooth muscle, but it's kind of facing me. This is in cross section. But if I see both of these, that kind of gives me an idea that I'm looking at smooth muscle, and so that's going to be lining the walls of hollow organs. There are no striations in here. The cells are very small, much smaller than they are in skeletal muscle, and then even smaller than they are in cardiac muscle as well. So this area here is the smooth muscle. All right. To look at the neuromuscular junction, here we go. All right, right here. So this is a sample of skeletal muscle, and we're going to look at a neuromuscular junction. And so here is the skeletal muscle fiber part of it, and then this kind of branching part here is the neuron part of it. So remember that we have 2 types of cells making up this neuromuscular junction. And some features, this is the motor neuron, and that it's always called a motor neuron when it goes to a skeletal muscle. And then it has these branches out this way. So these are all the branches still of the motor neuron. And they kind of end in these little almost button-shaped structures here. Now there's kind of another one right there, but these kind of button-like structures. And so this is the neuron, the motor neuron, or the axon. And then let me look for a better place here so that you can see the actual neuromuscular junction, because that's where the 2 interact. This will be okay. So this dark area here, this rounded portion here, I'm going to call the actual neuromuscular junction, because it's where the neuron comes in and interacts with the muscle fiber. And so I'm going to call this area here, kind of this square, the neuromuscular junction. here's your axon terminal, and then, or this is the motor neuron, and then the axon terminal will be in these kind of button areas. Now the reason that I don't call these button areas the motor end plate is because the motor end plate is actually the area of the skeletal muscle. So motor end plate infers that I'm looking specifically at the skeletal muscle fiber and not the neuron. And this part to me is the neuron. So axon of the motor neuron, and then the button part is going to be the axon terminal. All right, and I hope this video helps you understand the histology of the muscular system.